Week 5 is in the books. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. I was just working on the top 25 that actually makes sense. That will be out later today and becomes more and more difficult, of course, with each and every game played, because we are not like the AP or the coaches poll where you just say, oh, number 5 won, keep them there. Number 10 lost, but it was a decent game. Drop them to 17. On and on and on, and you just kind of move teams around a little bit and say, that looks good. Boop. No, if you really analyze and review the schedules and the results from week to week, it becomes extremely complicated. So I've never claimed it to be the perfect rankings, but it's much better than the AP and the coaches poll by far, and it's better than anybody's rankings because it's based solely on the field performance. Is it perfect? Again, that does not exist, but the best rankings in college football right here at the Voice of College Football, and those will be out later today, and I've got a lot of work to do. I've got a grid that has everybody's opponents and who they defeated, who they lost to, and by how many points. And so it's difficult to measure because I kind of do a rough estimation draft, and then I've got to weed through each spot and compare that to other teams and go through each spot and compare that to anybody who's comparable and really sift through it from there. And of course, we're now at 4 to 5 games for everyone. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. The Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. When you shop Amazon, please use our link. The best way for me to describe it as it pertains to you would be that if you use your Amazon link, whether that's a personalized Amazon link or you use the Amazon link that is just the company generic Amazon link, using our link is exactly the same. It is no different. It will instantaneously take you to your link with your history, your account information, your past purchases, your credit card information, whatever it is, takes it instantaneously to that. So for every dollar that you spend on Amazon, send us 3 cents, 8 cents, 5 cents, depending on the item. You might as well do that rather than accumulating trillions of dollars at Amazon. We appreciate you doing that. All right, let's get right to it. And I would go through the scores, but we got a caller on the line, and this is a caller-driven show. So let's go to the caller on the line. First and foremost, we got Caden stopping by.
Good morning, Mark. It's Caden the Man. That's right. It's Caden the Man live on YouTube. How you doing today, Mark?
I am doing just fine. How's it going?
I'm doing pretty good, sir. Everybody's favorite Ohio State Buckeye fan on YouTube. That's right. It's Caden the Man live on YouTube. Let's talk about that Ohio State game, 38-7, with Jeremiah Smith scoring 2 of the biggest touchdowns in that game. I will tell you, Jeremiah Smith is no joke. He is a true freshman who scored the most touchdowns in our season right now, besides Carnell Tate and Travion Henderson. But I mean, he's electrifying, and I foresee him winning the Heisman this year.
Okay.
And
I highly doubt that, but it's possible.
I mean, it's happened before. Like a freshman could be in the Heisman candidate. It could be a Heisman candidate. Like it can happen.
Oh, it can happen. Absolutely. Well, you understand that the odds are against everyone. Nobody's an odds-on favorite. So, yeah, I'm just stating facts that the odds are stacked against him. But yes, is he a Heisman candidate? I don't know that right now, but he's certainly a phenomenal talent.
And a once in a talent. I'll say that. And everybody says he's like Randy Moss. Yes, he is. Big. He's got skill. He's got good hands. He made that one-handed catch look like nobody else could do that kind of stuff.
Well, guys do that kind of stuff.
I just need that.
I heard that from somebody on one of the shows yesterday, and I don't even watch these shows, so it must have been at halftime that somebody made some kind of comment about him making catches that nobody makes. Is are people not watching college football across the nation? Yeah, there are other guys making one-handed catches. That's a great skill, but I see 20 or 25 guys. I've already seen those catches from like 20 guys this season. That's not what separates him. That's part of the skill set. If you can make those kind of catches, that separates you from 90 some percent of the other guys, but that doesn't separate you from everybody else because again, you see catches like that all over the place. I would not say, and now he's not had the opportunity to do this, but there's a couple Ole Miss receivers last year that made catches that were two of the greatest catches I've ever seen. One was Trey Harris, who's still with Ole Miss, who I would consider arguably to be the best wide receiver in the country.
I mean, I could agree with your point, like about Trey Harris with Ole Miss. And I'll just say this, Mark. I mean, even though Ohio State's schedule is pretty much garbage at this point, and pretty much we got to play, let's see, Iowa at home, Oregon on the road, and then Nebraska at home, and then, Purdue at home, and then Indiana at home, and then Indiana on the road, and then Michigan at home.
Yeah. You missed Penn State, but yeah, the schedule as of right now ceases to be garbage. It becomes extremely tough now.
It ceases to be garbage because Ohio State, I'm just going to say this as an Ohio State fan. Ohio State is the number one defense right now in the Big Ten. And I state that very clearly. Number one defense in the Big Ten. Fewest points allowed in the Big Ten. I mean, Dylan Gabriel struggled against UCLA. Like, come on, you gotta be kidding me. That shows me that clearly shows me that Dylan Gabriel is not ready for what Ohio State's got planned for those Ducks coming up soon. And Alex Orji, if they switch him out with the other quarterback against Ohio State, or they keep Alex Orji against Ohio State's defense, he's in trouble. I'm telling you that those two are in trouble because Ohio State's defense will run through them. And I guarantee you that.
I believe that Ohio State has the most talented defense in the country. I don't know that they're playing the best. I still have to catch up on what they did last night. But yeah, I want to see a challenge. So, of course, Iowa's not going to be a challenge offensively, although the running game is really good in the offensive line and Caleb Johnson. And then once they get to the Penn State game, well, before that, of course, Oregon, Penn State, we're going to find out how truly good this defense is because, yeah, from a talent standpoint and their production has been fine. You hold Michigan State to 7 points. That's a definite excellent effort. Michigan State, I can just about guarantee, is going to score more than 7 points against everybody else on the schedule. So I'm right there with you on the Ohio State defense. Want to see the Oregon game and the Penn State game in particular, though.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Drew Aller throws 2 interceptions, even 3 interceptions against Ohio State's defense in Happy Valley. Because him struggling the last couple of weeks, I wouldn't be surprised. And especially with, Michigan's loss to Texas and them struggling the last couple of weeks offensively and with penalties, that's going to be a big problem. And especially with, like I said, with Oregon and Dylan Gabriel, because they need to get that worked out. Because if they don't, it's going to be a bad day to be an Oregon Ducks fan coming up October 12th.
I can't argue with any of that. Ohio State is the best team in the Big Ten, and I don't think it's real close. But that's as of right now. Could they go out to Oregon and lose? Absolutely, they could. But they're a better team than Oregon.
And we're a better team than Michigan, and I will say that we're a better team than Penn State and Michigan. And that's clear. And that's clear.
Yes.
Now let me ask you, Mark, what team are you a favorite of, or what's your favorite college football team at this point? I'm just going to be curious. I'm just curious.
Who do I think is the best college football team in America?
No, I'm asking you, what football team are you a fan of? I'm just curious.
Okay, before I answer that, I'll ask you, how much have you watched me, and when is the first time you ever watched me? I'm just curious.
Actually, it was last night.
Oh, last night was the first time you ever watched?
Your show in particular, yeah, but this is the first time I'm calling in.
Gotcha. Well, I know that. Okay, very good. I'm an Ohio State fan.
Impressive.
Well, it's really not impressive. It doesn't take any great skill or any intelligence or anything to be a fan of anyone. So it's not
No,
really
because
impressive.
most call-in shows are ran by like Big 12 fans or SEC fans, Georgia fans, Clemson fans. You know, I've been on all of them, and especially they give me crap.
I don't report it. I've been on YouTube for a long time, and for a long, long time, nobody knew who I rooted for, and I would like it best that way. But I let it out at some point because people couldn't figure out who I rooted for, and that's how I would like it to be. And that was just proof to me that I was doing my job because people had no idea who I rooted for, and it's kind of difficult to do a show and be an Ohio State fan because they're in every conversation. I would rather be an Iowa State fan or a Kansas State fan or a Purdue fan or a Northwestern fan, because then I would just remove myself from the conversation and just talk about, because of course everyone wants to talk about the playoff and the elites, and that's the entire conversation all the time, the all-time greats, and ranking them and all that business. And because my team's right in the middle of all that, as arguably the best program in the country and arguably the best program in history, that makes it difficult, but that's what it is.
And speaking of a powerhouse speaking of a powerhouse college football team, let's talk about Texas. Let's talk about Texas next, because I've got a big question for them. They got Georgia next. This coming up soon.
Yeah.
And I've got a big question for Arch Manning or whoever is a Texas fan or whoever of his family is listening to this channel or this show. I just question Arch Manning if he's ready for a serious defense like Georgia's defense to show in Austin, Texas. Like, I get Alabama beat Georgia last night, but like the main question is, what if Georgia gets recovered? They get enough time to get back up and running, and they come in there and blow the roof off of Austin, Texas. Like, that's my question. Like, to like all the Texas fans, because I wouldn't be surprised if Georgia doesn't come into that game seeming like they're gonna limping, and then they just come out and storm Arch Manning.
Okay, well, you have a legitimate question because Arch Manning has only played against bad teams. So that's a legitimate question, but that's a question that confronts any quarterback, regardless of how talented they are, until they play somebody. CJ Stroud was a first-time starter. Trevor Lawrence was a first-time starter. Deshaun Watson, Bryce Young, all these guys, Justin Fields, all became starters either as sophomores or true freshmen or redshirt freshmen, and they had to prove it at some point against somebody good, and they all did. So I'm really not I understand your question because he has yet to prove it, but nobody's going to have an answer for you until they play someone and he can go out there and play. And I don't know, before they play Georgia, they've got a date against Oklahoma, and Oklahoma probably has one of the 10 best defenses in the country. So that would be the next game that I would look at. And I don't know what the status of Quinn Ewers is.
Yeah, I think he's on injury reserve at this point. I did see that. He is on injury reserve. But my thing is, with Oklahoma, they're not a good team, and Tennessee proved that against Oklahoma.
Whoa. I didn't say anything about Oklahoma as a complete team. Their defense, they have like a top 10 defense in the country. They have a really Oklahoma may have a better defense than Georgia. I'm not making that a declarative statement, but you have to be careful when you make these declarations of teams that Oklahoma is not a good team. Depending on your definition of good, they're one of the 25 best teams in America. But their defense in particular, and you're talking about Arch Manning, so therefore you're talking about Arch Manning playing defenses. He doesn't play the opposing offense or the opposing quarterback. Oklahoma's defense is serious.
And I watched that, and I'm going to say this: I watched that Texas-Michigan game with Arch Manning, when he got in there and just started throwing passes. I said he's got the precision of his two uncles built in his arm, like in his arm, so he can pretty much dissect a defense at any point in a game. So it's game over if you play a man and quarterback, especially the nephew of two man and quarterbacks, who are Super Bowl champions and MVPs. I mean, you gotta be kidding me. That kid's good. What my question, like against Oklahoma, I don't see that them being a problem in Arch Manning. I don't see that. But the thing is, I see Georgia being a
Can you name one Oklahoma defensive player?
no.
Okay, so you have no idea what you're talking about. That's what you're telling me right now.
I'm just saying because I watched the film on Oklahoma against Tennessee, and I watched that game.
You watched Oklahoma play Tennessee, okay?
Yep, and I'm just going to be completely honest, Art. That defense against Tennessee's offense with Josh Heupel, a former Oklahoma quarterback, being their head coach, and not only that, Nico's one of the best quarterbacks in the country right now.
Yes. Okay, I can agree with all of that.
But the thing is, with him making those good passes to the receivers, is that if he's got time, they're giving him time to throw the ball downfield. He's throwing those quick passes, and that's how he's breaking down the Oklahoma defense. And that's just how they do it. And watching that game with Nico and seeing him throw those passes. Those precise passes, I said, you know what? This kid's, Nico's got a good performance against Oklahoma. I believe 300 plus yards on passing.
Nico threw for 194 against Oklahoma. He went 13 for 21, and Tennessee rushed for 2.9 yards per carry against Oklahoma. They did not win that game because of their offense. Their offense didn't do anything special in that game. Tennessee won that game because they stepped up defensively, and Oklahoma's offense is terrible, and they had a ton of injuries. That's why Tennessee won that game.
Yeah, I mean that makes a good that's another good point on on Tennessee. Their defense, however, is a good unit, and I'm just gonna say this completely honest. To be honest, Mark, even if I'm just gonna say this for a playoff prediction. If you got a piece of pen and paper next to you, could you write this down?
And what do you want me to do with this?
I just want you to keep it so then you could at least tell me if I'm wrong in the next couple of months or if I'm right.
Yeah, you understand. If I write something down that you say right now, there's no way I'm keeping track of that. I have other things to keep track of. So it's on videotape. It's on digital archives. It's right here on YouTube. It's recorded. So it's there.
Yeah. I mean, I get that, but I'm saying is that my thing is Ohio State, and I'm going to say this, and I know people are going to get mad that I'm going to say this. Ohio State goes 12-0 by beating Oregon, Penn State, and Michigan by 49 plus points. Win the Big Ten title game, and then whoever we play in we get the first round bye, and then play the first round, that second round of the playoff game, and then we go win the national championship. And I don't care whoever steps up to Ohio State's team after that. They better hope and pray they got a good quarterback to try to dissect that defense, because Ohio State's defense does not play around. And what I saw against Michigan State and the last couple of games, they were no joke. And especially if they put Aaron Nolan in that game at quarterback, watch out for that kid. That kid is basically Michael Vick version 2. I'm telling you, that's how good that kid is. And that's kind of and that defense at Ohio State. I'm telling you, they're that dang good, and they're that elite. Okay. Now people could say,
all right, I tend to agree with your evaluation of Ohio State's defense. Again, they're going to have to play somebody, and they took a step toward that last night in playing Michigan State, a much better team than what they've played, and they held them to 7 points. Again, I need to go back and evaluate the game, but and I will. But so one statement you made in there, because I don't know that a whole lot of people would be that surprised if Ohio State won the national championship. They're certainly one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the country. So, but you said that they're going to beat Penn State, Oregon, and Michigan by 49 points. Is that total?
That's correct.
Is that total, or they're going to beat each one of them by 49 points?
They're going to beat each one of them by 49 plus points.
Well, first of all, they don't need to beat them by anything more than 1. That will do the job. But I certainly, I'm not a betting man, but I certainly would welcome 49 points in any of those games.
Yeah, and a lot of people say I'm out of my mind for saying Ohio State is going to beat everybody by 49.5 points.
Well,
against
considering they
Oregon,
just beat Michigan State and only beat them by 31, and Penn State, Oregon, and Michigan are all better teams than Michigan State, that's kind of logical to think that.
Well, and I'm going to say this. Those 3 games each, Ohio State wins by 49 plus.
Okay.
No questions.
Okay. You were clear on that. I'm making it clear to everybody here on YouTube so they know what I'm saying. Sure. So when Ohio State doesn't win all those games by 49 points, then what?
I'm just going to say, well, either something went wrong or they just couldn't get the defense back on. They couldn't get the defense that up enough.
If Ohio State beats, let's see, their next game against one of those 3 is Oregon in 2 weeks. So they go out to Oregon and they win that game by 42 points. Then is that like a disappointment, or?
I kind of just stepped over the board a little bit on points wise.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you being here.
And I will be back next Sunday morning. So
excellent.
By the way, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I will be streaming Monday.
See ya. I will decide if people can promote their stupid shows. So you moron will not be here next Sunday. So don't even attempt. I'll take note of this guy. Caden the man. He's not the man. He's a moron. So Caden, give it a month. Come back in a month and we'll talk again. Don't promote your stupid show. You're an idiot. So don't promote your show. Nothing gets my blood. Well, there's a few other things that are much more important that get my blood boiling, but like human trafficking, but nothing gets my blood boiling on this show than idiots coming on and promoting their show, especially when they've proven to know nothing about college football to begin with. So why would somebody come to your show and watch you just blabber on about nonsense? You have proven to be completely inept, sir, and you're a moron. All right, go to your show. I hope you get 1 million subscribers. That will just prove to me that YouTube's more insane than I thought it was. All right. Good Lord. Oh, and people are getting on him because he's an Ohio State fan. That has nothing to do with it. We have idiots that root for Michigan here. I see them every day. They're morons too. So we have morons in every fan base. So it has nothing to do with fan bases. I love when people pick on fan bases like, oh, that fan base, they're idiots. They're morons. They're delusional. No, every fan base is. Every fan base has their smart, intelligent fans, their logical fans, their rational fans, their reasonable fans, their classy fans, all of that. But then they also have their idiots. Every fan base. People ask me that all the time. Who has the worst fan base? Who has this fan base? The best fan base? The worst fan base? No, they're all the same. Not exactly 37%, 22% this. Not exactly, of course, but we don't know. All the fan bases have idiots and morons. Every fan base. This just happened to be an Ohio State fan who, and he was fine in saying whatever he said. He's a big homer. Obviously takes a much different angle to his approach than I do. We deal with truth, logic, facts, and he just blabbers on about stuff he doesn't know anything about, which is fine. It's a free country. We've got First Amendment rights. You have First Amendment rights to speak idiocy. You can be an idiot under the First Amendment. We protect your right to be a moron. And that's the way it should be. As long as you're not harming people, be an idiot. All right. We have left the call-in line there somewhere in the chat. I did, and maybe somebody else has. So if you want to give me a call, just be better than the last guy. And again, I had no issue with anything he had to say, other than he obviously knew nothing about the Oklahoma defense. And people can go on and on and on about predictions. Okay, I make predictions too, and I post my record. So we know how bad my predictions have been this year, but that's being accountable to your predictions. That's one thing I don't like about, I don't know if they've changed this on College Game Day because I haven't watched in years and years and years, but everybody making their predictions. Big deal. I've never seen anybody's record posted on their predictions. Do they do that on College Game Day? Anybody? Do they post anybody's records? They predict all the games. They don't pick them against the spread, but they pick all the games, which is fine. But has anybody's record been posted on any of those? So I hate situations when people aren't held accountable. It was always my view that if I was ever a head coach, you see this in the NFL more than any other sport that I know of. I might be wrong, but any sport that I notice, I see this in the NFL with players guaranteeing wins. Nothing. This is another one. And when I say nothing annoys me more than this, that just means it's in the category of the 25 things that annoy me the most somewhere, is when these players guarantee wins. What does that mean? You guarantee to win. What does that mean? You didn't guarantee a win. You're one player out of 53 or 105. You didn't guarantee anything. I am telling you, if I was a head coach in the NFL or whatever sport, and one of my players went on record as guaranteeing a win, there would be a simple response to that. If we won the game, great. I'd pat him on the back. You did your job, I guess. You probably did your job. You might have thrown 4 interceptions, but maybe as long as we won the game, hey, your guarantee came through, regardless of whether you had anything to do with it or not. If we would lose the game, this would be my response as a head coach or anybody within the organization with any power or authority. I would withhold your game check for that game and say, you guarantee that we would win this game. We did not lose this game. Therefore, we are withholding your game check. So maybe that will cause you to pause before guaranteeing a win. This guy is guaranteeing that Ohio State's going to win these 3 biggest games of the year by 49 points each. I thought he meant total at first, and I thought maybe, I doubt it, but maybe that would be 15 points, 16 points per game. Don't think that's going to happen, but they might. They could average a 16-point win against those 3 teams. They've got to get through Iowa in Columbus on October 5th. And should they beat Iowa? Absolutely, they should beat Iowa. They are much better than Iowa. But are they guaranteed to beat Iowa? Absolutely not. They will have to play well. And I can't wait to see the Ohio State offense operate against the Iowa defense. That, of course, is a premier matchup. It's going to be incumbent for the Ohio State defense to dominate the Iowa offense. And that seems to be an easy task, has been in the past, not necessarily an easy task now, because Iowa's offensive line is playing extremely well, and Caleb Johnson is running the ball. I don't want to say as well as anyone in the country or better than anyone in the country, but very close to that. This Ashton Genty with Boise State, and I'm not just saying this because of last night. I was saying this last season. Wow. Okay. Let's go through the scores. Or we could go through the comments here. Ferris, thank you for being here. Best Sunday morning show ever. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. That gives me a lot to live up to. Although maybe there aren't many great Sunday morning shows. I always liked, when I was a little kid, Davy and Goliath. Great show. That was a great show. That was a little claymation, slightly different than what we do here. Now, Sunday morning. Then we also have Meet the Press, which I haven't seen in years. That used to be a great show. I doubt whether it's a great show now. I would have great reservations in thinking that it's a great show now. But yeah, Meet the Press. Sunday morning. Anything else? I've kind of run the gamut there between Meet the Press and Davy and Goliath. I haven't watched a whole lot of Sunday morning television. All right. Aaron, is Kentucky good or is Ole Miss fraudulent? Ole Miss is a good team. A lot of talent. Really good team. Kentucky, are they good? Well, they've played 3 good teams. And they had a defensive struggle with one for one half, South Carolina, and then they imploded. And South Carolina, to its credit, ran away with a 25-point win. And then they played that game that they did against Georgia, who is still one of the top 5 teams in the country. Maybe that kind of game that Alabama and Georgia played last night only for me solidifies how good they are. It doesn't in any way. Now, they both showed flaws, of course, but it only solidifies how good they are to me. And so, no, Ole Miss is not fraudulent. I did not pick Ole Miss to go to the playoff, but I picked them to be awfully close to making the playoffs. But that was a big loss for Ole Miss, of course. They had a pretty favorable SEC schedule, and of course, their non-conference schedule is awful, so they didn't have to face Michigan or who did Alabama play? Wisconsin. They didn't have to play anybody of that caliber, non-conference. So they skated by with the 4 easy wins. And now they lose a game that we did not anticipate. So I don't think either one. I'm going to go with Kentucky's good. They're top 25 good. And Ole Miss, I still think, would win that game most of the time. And Ole Miss they're still one of the 15 best teams in the country. I think that's about where we can safely put those 2 teams. Good to see Jackson here and the Rod Farva. D-Rock Irish. Bleacher Report. Georgia is 45-3 since 2021, with all these losses being to Alabama. Incredible. That's now, how many good teams has Georgia beaten since 2021? They beat a couple good Tennessee teams, of course, and Michigan in the playoff and Ohio State in the playoff. So out of those 45 wins, you got to say about 30 of them are layups, but still, that's very impressive. All right, let's keep rolling here at the Voice of College Football. We got David on the line. David, you missed a caller a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
Who really represented the Ohio State fan base well.
Oh, okay. Not
meaning,
as well as me.
Meaning they didn't.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Well, I'm going to try and do a lot better because I did want to talk about the Buckeyes, Mark. Did want to talk about the action from last night. Wasn't able to call into the late night show because I was watching Arizona's upset of Utah, which, was interesting. Is it me, or as much as I like Kyle Willingham, doesn't Utah have one of those losses? And maybe this wasn't a head scratcher, but maybe where they just don't play well. Utah has some of those and maybe every program does, but this might have been one of those for Utah last night because they just did not look good. I don't know how much of that game you caught.
0. Did not see one play.
Yeah.
I was sitting here, but or did they play prime time or they played late?
Late night, yeah. That was
Yeah, they played late night.
Yeah.
So anyway, they lost by 13. They did play the backup quarterback, who was good enough to beat Oklahoma State the week before. But now, having seen Oklahoma State, so I watched most of the Oklahoma State Utah game, but having watched Oklahoma State yesterday, or started to watch Oklahoma State before it was painfully obvious that they were not going to stay in the game with Kansas State. Oklahoma State's just not a good football team at all.
No. I didn't have high expectations for the Pokes coming into the year this year. I don't know if you did. I saw them as maybe middle of the tier kind of Big 12 type football team. Maybe Cam Rising not playing is the excuse for Utah because they did not look good offensively. Rising's an older guy. He probably had to get his hip replaced or something. I don't know, but at his age. But that was a joke. Maybe not. That one might not have landed, but I was going to give it a shot, Mark.
But it's tough to land jokes with me, so you got to be really good.
True.
I'm sure it landed with the chat. I'm sure they're raving about it right now.
I'm sure. I thought it was at least worthy of a chuckle. Want to talk about the action? The big. No, thanks, Mark. In any case, I want to talk about the two biggest games and the two games I wagered on last night. I took Bama on the money line. Wow, what a game! I don't know. It was, I got to see Uncle Lou's rant from a bar after that game was 21-0 at the end of the first quarter, and it wasn't good. Man, poor Uncle Lou. I tell you what, and I don't think Georgia. I mean, obviously Georgia's past moral victories here, but I think it's fair to say, I don't know how much you talked about this. I didn't get a chance to see the chat last night. They showed some heart in the second half. Let's give at least a little bit of credit for Kirby's crew to showing some heart in the second half.
So 21-0, Uncle Lou's going crazy. So my response to that is that's what I would expect. But
yeah,
and that's not a good position to be. But you know what was running through my head even before they ever scored 1 point was Patriots. I said this last night, Patriots, Falcons. People, I think, again, there's an overreaction to everything in the world. And it's not like, again, that's a great place to be. Of course, there's a reason they put up statistics like this would be Georgia's greatest comeback ever. It doesn't happen often. But still at the same time, it did not surprise me in the slightest that Georgia came back in that. It didn't surprise me that Alabama won because I picked them to win like you, and that Georgia came back in that game did not surprise me at all.
You know what? I realized. Give Beck some credit. He started to hit some shots, and he was slicing and dicing them in the second half. I will say this: the one thing about Bama that could be concerning going forward, especially as they face some of the better quarterbacks down the road, that secondary, which was a strength of that team. A year ago when they had Arnold and McKinstry and Caleb Downs and that crew, I think really got exposed in the second half. And I told you before the game, I had doubts in Georgia's receivers, but they were making plays in that second half.
Yeah, they were making plays. Most of them were just running down the field and catching passes that were wide open.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, the Alabama secondary
really making plays.
Well, yeah, well, that's why I mentioned about the exposure of the Alabama secondary.
Exactly.
Mark. That's
yeah. I don't know if that shows us much about the Georgia receiving core.
No, I again, I think it's more about Alabama
running down the seam, waving your hand, and then catching them. Not that they didn't make contested catches, because I'm sure they did. I don't recollect, but it was a heck of a game. And there's no team that's not flawed in some way.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, I think Alabama offensively, by the way, Milroe. A couple of points about Alabama's offense. I do want to. I'm going to pat myself on the back a little bit about pointing out Ryan Williams before this game. He is amazing, isn't he, Mark?
Yes.
I mean, the future with Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith at wide receiver over the course of the next couple years is going to be just awesome to see what both of those guys are going to do over the course of the next couple seasons in college football. So I was debating, and I think I mentioned this to you before. In one of the chats I was in about Milroe being an NFL quarterback. Some people said that Milroe reminded him a little bit of Anthony Richardson. I want to stipulate I wasn't a big Anthony Richardson fan coming out of that draft. Him and his 5-game sample size at Florida going into that draft or whatever he had. But I think Milroe does what Milroe does. He runs well. He throws the deep ball well. I don't know if he's good enough in the pocket or throws all the routes on the route tree well enough, particularly the intermediate routes accurately, to be a really good NFL quarterback. I don't know if you see it the same way.
Yeah, I think he's improved tremendously. He's not just a guy that can do 2 or 3 things like check it down, throw a bomb, or take off and run, but he's actually, they design plays that he has to throw in tight windows, and he's improved his ability considerably. I think we're way too hard on most of these quarterbacks that are really good. I think we watch and compare them to the guys that play on Sunday way too much. I guess that's my theory on what people are doing, watching these guys, because I hear comments made all the time about, he missed 3 throws. Well, of course he missed 3 throws. He threw 35 passes. He's going to miss 3 or 4 or 8 or something like that, because everyone does. But I think he's a really good quarterback. And, I think he's more advanced than Anthony Richardson. He's a more polished player already than Anthony Richardson.
I could see that, but again, I wasn't big on Richardson coming out of that draft either, and still, I'm waiting to see whether he's going to be the big time NFL quarterback, that the Colts thought he would be by drafting him where they did. I don't know. I'm still on the verge of saying that Milroe might be just a really good college quarterback and not an NFL starting quarterback, but offensively, I did think he would show some growth under DeBoer in that offense in another year. So I will say. I think Alabama going forward, though, is going to be a dangerous, dangerous offense to deal with. But I just think that the SEC, I just have the feeling that this is one of those years where it purges itself. I get that kind of 2-loss champion possible feel out there.
Well, that's never happened.
Well, 07 Florida, or 07 LSU, pardon me.
Oh, that was a long time ago. Yeah. Okay. I kind of meant,
yes. I had to come up with one, Mark.
Sure. You're right. They did. And obviously other SEC champions before that had 2 losses, but I'm talking about playoff era. So Alabama's going to lose 2 games.
Possibly. It depends on if they lose the title game.
Yeah. Texas is a bad schedule for an SEC schedule.
Yeah, well, then for Georgia, now they've got to think about that trip to Austin.
Sure. And Oxford.
Right. And Tennessee at home.
And they got Tennessee at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is gosh, and I picked Georgia at the beginning of the year. Maybe although again, they showed some heart in that second half, but they needed this one more than Bama, didn't they, Mark?
Yes. They've got a tougher road. They needed this more than Bama. And, of course, they could have lost to Kentucky. This could have been their second loss very easily.
Yeah, I don't know. The rest of this SEC, I just think there's so many landmines. I mean, if Ole Miss is losing to Kentucky, I mean, there's I wouldn't be surprised if one of the better teams in the SEC tripped up maybe somewhere they shouldn't, Mark, is what I'm saying.
Oh, I think that the odds are that it will happen. If you mean Georgia, Alabama, and Texas, will one of them lose somewhere where they shouldn't, meaning not to each other,
Right.
yeah, I would count on that.
Well, that's where I was going about that being a possibility, Mark.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess I'm bragging about the SEC. Maybe I shouldn't be doing that as a well-known Big Ten guy here, but and I still think the Big Ten is a solid conference, but I think it's a solid number 2 conference still. As far as top to bottom, right, Mark? Is the gap
Top to
still
bottom. Top to bottom.
the gap still pretty much there as you evaluate it between the two, Mark?
Yes. There's definitely a gap top to bottom. Now, it only takes one or two teams to make a league look really good. So the Big Ten still has that opportunity. And I think Ohio State, I've already said this in this show, is clearly the best team in the Big Ten.
Agreed. Yeah, well, I want to say that, and let me get to the Big Ten. By the way, my second wager was the second big game we talked about on Friday. Mark was happy to see that Illinois held on and
Hmm.
covered that 19. I was so worried Altmaier was going to throw a pick six, Mark, or fumble the ball, and it was going to be 28-7, and my bet was going down the toilet
Sure.
there at the end.
Well, there was one that they ran down to like the 5-yard line, but then it got called back.
Yeah.
Because of pushing the back that got yanked back to the 40-yard line. So I was right there with you. Now, I had no money on the line, but I didn't want another pick to go down the tubes.
Yeah, your record's been struggling this year, right, my friend?
It's terrible.
No, geez.
It's the worst record I've ever had.
I don't see how you're going to put the addition onto that palatial estate of yours, Mark.
Not at this
Not
rate.
at this rate.
No.
In any case, Penn State is very Penn State to me. I mean, this still looks like a future 10-2 football team waiting to happen. By the way, they run the ball. The defense is solid. I still don't think they generate enough chunk plays in the passing game, and it's basically looking like a typical Franklin 10-2 football team. Although there's a path to 11-1. A USC and Penn State game is going to be really, really interesting.
Yeah, it is.
By the way,
Penn State is a better version of Wisconsin. They have a lot of similarities to Wisconsin, but they're much better.
Sure. Yeah, because
better quarterback, better defense. They're decidedly better than Wisconsin. But I think they want to play pretty similar football, where they want to run the ball and they're not afraid to throw it, but they don't want to feature the throw game. They don't want to go up tempo. They want to slow the game down and just play at a methodical pace. They're very much like Wisconsin in that way. And Wisconsin played a good half, of course, against USC. Then they got trampled. But yeah, I'm very intrigued to see Penn State and USC on the same field. And just to further your point about Penn State in this Illinois game, that's a nice win. Illinois is a solid team, but not only did Penn State not be able to explode and separate themselves from Illinois, Illinois' offense ineptitude after the first touchdown drive even gives Penn State even more opportunities after all those 3 and outs to take advantage and beat down a defense, and they never could do it. They could never, if Illinois could have made one play, then that game would have been extremely interesting. It's 14-7 with 5 minutes left.
Well, see, that's why I was making the Illinois-Iowa comparison on who's, by the way, would be a really good football game. Your type of old school 1983 Big Ten game right there, Mark.
Yeah.
That's your 15-12, 16-13 special right there.
I don't know, Dave, if you want to go back to 1983 scores in that range, that you're going to find as many of those as you think you will.
No, I know. I was saying that partially tongue in cheek, but
Ohio State and Illinois, by the way, you may know this, in 1980 played one of the great shootouts in the history of the Big Ten, 49-42.
Well, I vaguely remember more than the one in 84 where Byers went post.
45-38.
Yeah, with Trudeau and
45-38. How about that?
Yeah,
but
there you go.
49-42 in 1980, Dave Wilson, who was a future NFL quarterback with the New Orleans Saints, set the all-time passing yardage record in that game against Ohio State.
You
621.
How'd your guy do that day? Your guy probably did some business.
Oh yeah, he did some business too because he put up 7 touchdowns.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the gambler did well that day.
yes.
Did he
He
have
may have
money on it, Mark? No, I'm
I
kidding. I
not
should.
against hopefully not against the spread because they were a big favorite and squeaked by, but anyway, I
Yeah,
digress. Just because I'm
yeah,
pointing out that they would light it up a little bit back then, but yeah, Iowa, Illinois, I would be all in on that game.
yeah. I shouldn't get after Art. I mean, the guy's been through a lot. Well,
Yeah,
of his own doing. So
sure.
I'm sure you've read a lot about that though, too, Mark. But well, you know a little bit about it, I'm sure.
Yes.
I digress. But just kind of how I see the Big Ten kind of playing out, I think it's basically, I agree with you. It's Ohio State, it's Oregon. And then do you think it's basically the USC Penn State game is the third place game in the Big Ten?
Yes. Now that's an easy way to look at it. Now, neither Penn State nor USC play Oregon. Wait a minute. Penn State does not play Oregon,
No,
correct?
no, they avoid
No.
Oregon and they avoid the team up north.
Yeah. So I tend to think of it that way, but I don't think it's quite that simple. I don't think that either one of those teams need to take a third place to Oregon just because they don't play them.
Okay.
What if Ohio State goes in there and wins by 2 touchdowns at Oregon and take your pick? We'll go the Penn State route because they haven't lost like USC has. They're undefeated. They beat USC on the road.
Yeah. I mean, I just think right now, I mean, kind of looking at the teams and the way they've been playing. By the way, were the referees on the take up in Ann Arbor yesterday, or what was that on that onside kick? Because even Peterson and them were commenting after that on the Fox broadcast that was a joke.
It was a joke.
I mean,
It was a joke.
are you serious?
Why are you deciding football games? And I'm not saying that Minnesota would have won the game, but let the players decide the games. Ticky tack. I know that based on my interpretation of this rule, or just my understanding of the rule, I should say, because there's little to interpret, is that the any part of the body, if it's past the line of scrimmage, then it's an offside. So you can call it. So by the nth degree of the letter of the law, the official could have made that call, did make the call, was within their bounds to make the call. But I just don't agree with that type of officiating.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you. By the way, they'd have been set up though, Mark. I mean, the ball at what, the 30-some yard line, and
And they had
looking
scored 3 consecutive touchdowns.
right, a minute and some change, 30-some yard line. They could have closed that deal. By the way, going to be an interesting podcast this week once you make your visit with your buddy up there, because I wonder if he's going to recalibrate his thinking now after that performance yet again. But as far as the expectations for this football team, so
I was watching that. I watched that entire game and thinking in the first half, even so, this is my overreaction
yeah,
because I thought Michigan was going to win like 24-10,
Hmm, that's right.
and they were on their way to that kind of win. But man, if Max Brosmer can get it fired up there for 3 consecutive drives and started carving them up. And
Max
that
Brosmer, wow,
marginal Minnesota wide receiver core, they've got one guy.
right.
He started carving them up, and yeah, that was a real football game there at the end.
Well, that was the one thing is I know the team up north fans are looking at their offense and obviously questioning their passing game, and well, they should. But and I know their defense played incredibly well against USC, particularly up front. But the more I watch this defense is not as dominant as it was a year ago, not even close. You can see the secondary without Moore and Samerstill and those guys is not the same secondary that it
Nope.
was a year ago. And I don't think they're quite as dominant in the front seven as they were a year ago either. So, but I'm not going to shed any tears, Mark. I'll have you know that. So
Iowa scored 24 straight points against that Minnesota team the week before, and I caught some of that game, and they were all over Minnesota's quarterback. They had a much better pass rush than Michigan did.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about it mainly because. Oh, by the way, quick comment on the USC Wisconsin game. I do think that even though USC did not get the stop defensively that they needed last week up in Ann Arbor, I still think and maybe USC had nowhere to go but up, but that defense is better. That defense is definitely better than it's
Oh,
been
sure it is.
in the past. But to be fair, it had nowhere to go but up. So, and by no means a dominant defense, but they give Lincoln Riley some credit. They've made a move up defensively. They've leveled up defensively.
I
Probably
absolutely agree with that.
getting rid of Alex Grinch, probably addition by subtraction there.
I
Yeah,
thought that on opening night based on how they played against LSU.
right. Agreed. I mean, Iowa, by the way, Mark. I know Corey. I know you got the Iowa people, but Iowa defensively, how do they compare? Would you say over the last couple Iowa teams on the defensive side of the ball? Because that's really what I'm wondering.
They gave up explosive plays to Iowa State, and that's what lost the game. And that's unlike them. And then Minnesota put together 2 scoring drives that were pretty impressive, like march down the field in the second quarter. That now nobody's going to go crazy about anybody giving up 14 points, but they gave up 2 consecutive scoring drives to a Minnesota team that in the past had difficulty doing anything against Iowa since Iowa's been dominant on defense. They have practically shut out Minnesota in these games. Like they don't give up anything, 100 yards of offense kind of games. And Minnesota could move the ball at least for a couple stretches of time to put points on the board. So they're not playing as well as they have the last few years. They looked going into the season that they would have another dominant defense. It might be the best linebacking core in the nation. The secondary is supposed to be really good. But again, they got gashed against Iowa State in the air during that comeback. So they have given up more explosive plays. I heard this year, the numbers about equal with last year already.
Well, because where I was going was obviously next week, Mark. This was the interesting test for my Buckeyes. I thought the way the schedule ramped up and lined up was perfect, and I thought it was great for them to have Iowa right before Oregon, because this is going to be the truest test of how much better our offensive line is, and really, where Will Howard is at against what I think is going to be a really good defense still. And, can he make the right decisions, avoid the big mistake, so on and so forth. I don't know what your early thoughts are on that. When you looked at the schedule and the way that lined up.
Well, you should have been around. Let's see, it must have been Friday night. I got Corey a bit agitated. He jumped on a call because then we had a debate about Big Ten quarterbacks because I simply said Cade McNamara is not that good.
You did say that. I actually did hear that.
Were you listening
Yeah.
to that?
Yeah, I caught a little bit of that conversation.
I started sifting through the Big Ten quarterbacks, and I thought this is not a great quarterback league by any stretch. Nobody could argue that. And actually, I'm only taking him over about 3 teams' quarterbacks.
Right. No, and we've talked about it a little bit too. I actually talked about it on the Team Up North podcast about where the level of play of Big Ten quarterback are this year, maybe the years past. Not that it's been incredible in previous years, right, Mark? But this year seems to be, very. Would you use the term mediocre, Mark, or below mediocre?
For Big Ten quarterbacks?
Yeah, to describe the level of Big Ten quarterback play in 2024.
Yeah, it's actually better than I thought it was going to be.
Okay. I will say this about the Buckeyes. I just want to make a few comments. How much have you seen them so far, Mark? Or I know you've got a lot to watch with college football.
Well, actually, I got an invite from a buddy to come over to his house last night and watch the Buckeyes game, but I thought, I'm going to be watching Ohio State, and then I'll have a laptop on my lap watching Alabama and Georgia, and I don't want to go through all that. And So anyway, I stayed here and I thought, am I going to order this Peacock again? And then I thought, I don't want to
No,
mess with
it's
it. So
it.
I didn't see a play. Now I can go ahead and just watch it now. I'm sure it's on YouTube. So that's what I intend on doing. But I didn't watch. I saw Jeremiah Smith's 2 catches. That's what I
Mm,
saw last night.
yeah, wow. And those were the right plays to see, Mark. But yeah, the Siciliano Colt McCoy combination left a little bit to be desired last night,
Yeah.
as far as the announcing crew.
I
But
heard Colt McCoy. They must have put him on the main NBC broadcast for somebody this year. I think it was Notre Dame. One of
oh,
the
was it
Notre
really?
Dame games, because I got to hear him for quite a while, but I don't remember listening to Notre Dame for long, other than the Texas A&M game, and that was a Herb Street game. But anyway, I listened to Colt McCoy for a while. Yeah, somebody needs to let him know that he needs to show a little enthusiasm for the
Yeah.
game.
Yeah, it wasn't great. Peacock's still leaving a lot to be desired. But to the Buckeyes, just kind of watching this team, Mark, kind of both sides of the ball. From an offensive standpoint, obviously the playmakers are still great. The backs and receivers are what I thought they would be, which are great. Emeka Egbuka continues to be one of the most underrated. I think people talk one of the more underrated Buckeye receivers in recent years. And yet another year where he might be the second best receiver on the team, and he's just so consistent. He gets open, he makes plays, he's got really good hands. And Jeremiah Smith is something that I haven't seen, because I have to say this. Usually a college receiver comes in and they just think they're going to blow by people with athleticism, and that's it. And they're not really polished with their ability to run routes and catch the ball. This guy's already developed in that area. Usually, you come to college to get coached up and attain those abilities so you can be prepped and ready for the NFL. He's already got it. He's already got it. He can run routes. He's still got the hands. He's good in and out of breaks. I mean, he's got all the skill set an NFL receiver already has. And I mean, I like Will Howard. I will say this. He probably should have had 2 picks last night. Sparty dropped an interception in the end zone before he threw a touchdown to G. Scott. It gave me a little bit of PTSD from last year when I was always waiting for Honda to make that horrible, terrible throw that he shouldn't. You can clearly see he's more mobile. He throws the intermediate routes really, really well. Still waiting for that play action deep shot once they cross 50, the 50-yard line. Love to see it. Chip Kelly, you might want to think about dialing that up every now and then. I know the defense has got to be in the right spot to do so, but please, let's just try a couple to have that in our bag. And the only other concern I would say about Ohio State offensively is Fryer at tackle. Is if he has to face an elite pass rusher, it gives me some concern. Although they might need to give him a little bit of help over on that side. But Simmons, who was a weak link, has developed into a really good tackle, and the interior of the line is fine. Um, Defensively, I mean, the pass rush is a little bit lacking. I expected a little bit more from the pass rush in general. Um, I will say the benefit of this team, and you really see it on defense with these players coming back, is the depth. I mean, they've got younger guys that would be starting on other defenses. And the rich people problems that Ohio State has on defense is they have people that they can rotate in. And I don't think that there's a drop off. They have this corner, Jermaine Matthews, who, if he comes in for Igbinosun or Burke, there's not a drop off. I put in Ohio State chat earlier this week. I think he might be the second best corner on the team. And most people have already decided that Arvell Reese at linebacker could be the best linebacker on the team. And the defensive tackle, Caden McDonald, the big guy they got out of Georgia, is going to be great. Want to see us get your guy back, Tyleek Williams, who I think will really help the run defense. But top to bottom, both sides of the ball, Mark, I still don't think there's many holes on this team. Just kind of looking at it overall. Again, I'd like to see the pass rush be a little bit more dominant. You'd think this would be a year, if the front four is not getting there, because we have more confidence in the secondary than we did 2 years ago, and more confidence in the corners than we did 2 years ago, that Knowles might be more likely to blitz if he needs to, because he's more confident in his corners. Because remember, our corners were getting cooked 2 years ago.
Yep.
They're light years better this year than they were 2 years ago. If you're not afraid to leave them on islands, then why not blitz? I mean, Burke's locking people down. Igbinosun can get handsy at times and maybe commit a bad penalty.
Absolutely.
He could be the mark back there. That's the one. But the Ransom Downs combination is amazing. By the way, they're really good. They were incredible in that first half last night. But
Well, I
overall,
look forward to watching
yeah.
the game, but I've seen the other 3 games. I caught up with the other 3 games, and I can't disagree with anything that you've laid out there. I think that this has the makings of the best defense in the country. I don't think they played like it against Marshall, but they didn't need to play like it. So it's always difficult to assess these situations when these guys are playing. It's just human nature, playing to 80% of their potential, maybe something like that, playing those kind of games. But by all indications, they gave up some yardage in the first half. I saw that the figure was around
Sparty moved the
200
ball
yards
well.
in the first half. They were giving up plays to get them Michigan State into the red zone.
Yeah, Sparty played well. Childs was hitting some throws. He had some clean pockets. Seemed like the corners were playing off and giving up some throws. They really got bailed out by forcing a couple turnovers in that first half. Ransom forced 2 huge fumbles in that game. That's what I'm saying. Ransom and Downs in that first half were all over the place. They look great. I love the way the schedule ramps up. I think Iowa's the perfect test before Oregon, before going to Eugene. But I'm confident. I think this is a balanced offense. I love every Ohio State offense where I know we can run it and throw it. I think now the running game was choppy last night, though. It wasn't, but Sparty was selling out to stop the run. It seemed like they were bringing up people to the box to try and stop the run and dare Howard to hit some throws, which he was able to do. So, still really, really optimistic. But Iowa is going to be a really interesting test. I want to see how Howard looks. Does he not make the mistake throws? Is he still sharp? And then the offensive line, how we look up front trying to block them. But
yeah, I think those are all reasonable. I'm right there in line in terms of your order of concerns and what those concerns are. And they're very mild concerns. As Will Howard at Will Howard rate of the last 2 or 3 years is good enough for Ohio State to win the Big Ten. I don't know if he's good enough to win. He needs to play better, maximize his skills, play an outstanding game to win a national championship, to get through a semifinals and a championship game, most likely.
Yeah, and I love the way Day has the staff situated finally. Chip calling the offense, Knowles calling the defense. Yeah. It's fine. It's where it needs to be.
Yeah.
Just to Chip, a couple deep shots. Once we cross the 50, if we can get a couple of those in there to maybe keep the defense honest, maybe Jeremiah Smith double moves somebody and we get a deep throw once we've run the ball for a couple of first downs, boom. That's the ideal time to go for it,
And this has been a narrative that you brought up about the pass rush. This has been going on for 4 or 5 years, where the combination of defensive line coach, recruited talent, their NFL prospectus, all that should add up to a more devastating defensive line, and especially pass rush.
Yeah. I mean, the D line for the most part plays the run well. I mean, the pass rush is just kind of spotty, and I'd be okay. And they don't necessarily need to get sacks, but at the very least, I'd like to see the pressures and the hurries, which they do track in football. I like to see them ramp that up.
Absolutely.
As Urban used to say, affect the passer. So.
Yep.
All right. Well, we got pro football today. I got my brownies I got to get to, so that ought to be.
Okay. Enjoy.
Geez. Yeah. Well. Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Enjoy. All right, David.
Mark,
good to see you.
Take care of yourself.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Before we take our next call, let me step off for just a minute, but we've got another caller on the line. And of course, we'll get through your comments and questions. If you have any here at the Voice of College Football, I'll be back in like 2 minutes. All right. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for your patience. Here we go. Next caller up here at the Voice of College Football. Who do we have on the line? Michael.
Hey, Mark. Good morning, sir. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing well. How are you?
Hanging in there for Sunday, getting ready for another week of some NFL football. But
Nice.
I just went back while you were taking the break and stuff like that. And that Minnesota, you said you didn't catch the Minnesota-Michigan game yesterday, right?
I watched the whole game. Yes.
That is about as Razor's close can be on the offsides.
Yeah, that was a bad call. I just think it was unnecessary. It wasn't a bad call technically, but it was unnecessary.
They have a saying, and I'm not sure if you've heard this before, and the officials say if something like that is close, swallow the whistle. In other words, let it go.
Well, you're an official. Would you have called that?
I personally probably wouldn't have called it, but I've seen times where I've like went back and watched the game film, and it's like, yeah, I should have called it. But they don't say that people don't want the officials to decide the game, but sometimes we got to decide the game.
Well, sure. Yeah, if something's egregious. I hate to see, I'll put these into three categories. If there's a call like that one that is so incredibly finite and minuscule that you have to, diagnose the videotape to the nth degree to determine whether that was technically a penalty, and it's at the conclusion of a game. If that's in the first quarter and you want to call that to say, hey, this is a rule, make sure that you're on sides because this is a real rule, we're going to call it, then that's one thing. Obviously, there aren't going to be too many onside kicks in the first quarter. However, there are possibilities.
Unless you're Tennessee.
Yeah. Unless you want to win by 70 points.
Yeah.
But of course, you can still be offsides on a kickoff, even a traditional kickoff.
Yep.
But anyway, there's just less incentive to be. But I believe in that type of officiating. Then late in the game, you brought up the NFL. There was a call made in the AFC Championship game in 2019. I want to say that was the year. Maybe it was 2018. Patriots at the Chiefs, where Tom Brady threw an interception that ended the game for Kansas City. However,
you mean ended the game for would have ended the game for
would have ended the game.
Brady threw the interception.
I can't think of shoot. I can't believe I can't remember his name. It was offsides for he played at Auburn.
I know the play you're talking about.
Shoot. Anyway, oh my goodness, my memory's getting bad.
All right, but anyway, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, he was so Brady threw a pass to the right side.
Mm-hmm.
The Auburn defender, the Kansas City defender, was offside on the left side by he had a foot over the line of scrimmage.
Mm-hmm.
Completely non-affecting the play in any such way, because Brady basically just took the snap, didn't even take a 3-step drop and just released the ball and got picked off. It's driving me crazy. His name.
All right, but I got to ask you a question though.
But I have no issue with the official making that call, but I hate to see a penalty that does not affect the play decide any game, but especially a championship game.
Mm-hmm. But one thing I was going to ask you this though, Mark, is because I've seen it before. Like if the center sees that they're across, how many times do you see a potential bad snap going back to the quarterback? Because if they see it, they're going to snap the ball. Am I right or am I wrong?
If the center sees that somebody's offsides, they snap the ball.
Yeah.
To catch them offsides.
And to get the flag. And I wonder if that situation, the center from New England see that and snap the ball. I don't know. I can't remember that several years ago, but I remember the game you're talking about.
Yeah, well, regardless.
But one thing I was trying to figure out is what is it with Alabama and stuff like that. It seemed like when they play a good team and stuff like that, like Georgia and stuff like that, they get out to the big lead, and then they got to literally fight for their lives. Say, hang on. Is your secondary still garbage?
Is it garbage?
Yeah.
It may have looked like garbage in the second half. Was it garbage in the first half?
No, it was lights out because they picked
Okay. And how many teams across America would like to have Alabama secondary?
Yeah, sure. No, I was just asking from your point of view and stuff like that. Why is it? I'm trying to figure out why is it that they like almost like let Georgia come. Yeah, everybody knows Georgia's a second half team, but like if I was like handling the ball, I would keep my foot down on the pedal the whole game. Do not let them have an opportunity to come back.
Okay. Well, that's a complex question because I don't think there's any one factor that allows a team to get back into that ball game. What did we think? So let's start with this. What was our thinking about Alabama and Georgia going into this game? About
I said
how good they were against each other.
true.
What
And
was
I
the
actually,
Vegas
if you
spread?
yeah, and actually,
They
if you
basically played to the Vegas spread. They played a one possession game. They played to the final play of the game, and Vegas had it as a 1-point game. So
Mhm.
basically, they showed us last night that Vegas was dead on this game, that it's a coin toss.
Mhm.
So that's what it turned out to be. Regardless of how we got to that point, with Alabama scoring the first 28 and then Georgia coming all the way back, we got to that point. So that should
Mhm.
be no surprise. Just because Alabama got off to a great start, number one. Number two, it's human nature to take your foot off the gas, not necessarily to do it consciously thinking, oh, we got this game won. I think
Yeah.
any Alabama player that thought they had the game won at 28-0 really needs to have their head examined.
Mhm.
Maybe none of them did. Maybe some of them did. We'll never know.
Yeah.
But I think also teams tend to white knuckle it a little when they get a big lead in a huge game, because then the coaching staff, I think, walks a thin line on how to coach the rest of the game. Do we just stay on the throttle and just play this game like it's 0-0?
Mhm.
And maybe that's not the smartest thing to do because we're not conserving clock. We're not actually using the clock and all those other things that we could be doing, running the ball a little bit more, those sorts of things. But then if we get too conservative, we don't want to do that because there's plenty of time. I immediately, when it got to 28-0, knowing Georgia's capabilities and that there was so much time left, I was thinking of talking about the NFL. I even tweeted this: Patriots, Falcons, Super Bowl.
Mhm.
When I noticed that Alabama was not using the full play clock, you're just asking for trouble when you at least don't run the play clock. Now, if the clock
Doug.
stopped, if the game clock stopped, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about running
Play clock.
the clock. And Alabama
Because
wasn't doing that. You can be just as aggressive in your play calling as you want to be, but if you're not going to use the play clock, that's just stupid.
yeah, I'm like, why are they snapping the ball with like 10 seconds? Like I was a couple of different other streams like that last night. They was both saying run the play clock down to like maybe 2 or 3 seconds, then snap the ball. But they wasn't
Sure.
doing that. But anyway, but I will say this though, Mark, that there was people I was chatting to said I said whoever had the ball last was going to win the game last night, and obviously it did happen. But that one catch that Ryan Williams had there for like the 55 yards, that was the way to stay with the ball, though.
Yeah, absolutely. That was an amazing play. Now run that by me again. You said that the team with the ball last was going to win the game.
Yeah. Well, basically, even though Georgia had the ball, they threw the interception. But
Yeah, so that didn't happen.
well, I mean, sure. But one thing I'm going to try to figure out, and I got to ask you is, when is people going to start taking Indiana seriously?
When they beat a good team. I take them seriously. I take them seriously in that they've improved considerably. Do I know that they're a contender for the Big Ten championship? No, I doubt it. When are they playing somebody that's actually
They
a
got-
top 25 team in the country. Let's see here.
They got Nebraska. I mean, they got Northwestern next week. Did they bye week? They got Nebraska on the 19th.
Yeah, these things start to just continue to reinforce that they're a good team. If they got Nebraska at home,
Mm-hmm.
and if they lose close or win, then I'm going to say they're a good team. They're a decent team.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we talk about like if they play Michigan on November 9th, and if
Yeah.
they win that game,
Yeah. And I think that game's in Bloomington, isn't it?
yes,
And is your house that game in Bloomington or is that in Columbus?
it's in Columbus.
Okay.
So if they go to Columbus and win, then I'll be throwing
That'll
a
put them
party
what?
for
10
Indiana.
That would be what, 10-0 for them?
Yes, or 11-0.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I was wondering because I know they're hitting. I know they're. But the pundits have been talking about it and stuff like that. But until they get that win signature win, we'll see what happens and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a great
So,
story.
'cause they don't
They're
get
doing
paid-
well. I did not think that they were going to beat Maryland by 21 points yesterday.
Mm. Yeah, or was it 14? But no, but I'm trying to think.
14?
The remaining games
Okay.
they got is Nebraska and Michigan. They don't get Penn State this year, do they?
I don't think so.
And or Ohio State. Those are probably the three toughest games. And I got a feeling that they'll go 2-1 in those games. I could be wrong though.
They're going to go 2-1 against Nebraska, Michigan, and Ohio State.
They could.
Well, of course they could. I highly doubt it. But they might.
Yeah, because 2 of those games is in Bloomington. That's what I'm saying. So
Yeah, I don't think that matters.
Yeah, true. Not bad. So, but how surprised are you about the 24-point spread with Iowa and Ohio State next week?
Surprised?
Yeah,
Not surprised at all.
you sounded. You think it should be bigger or something? Or not,
No, I don't think it should be bigger. I think I would tend to lean Iowa's direction. I would tend to take the 24 points. Ohio State was roughly a 24-point favorite against Michigan State, and that game was on the road. Iowa doesn't tend to move point spreads very high. These two teams played 2 years ago in Columbus, and Ohio State was a 30-point favorite, and they won by 44 points. And this team's probably better than that team.
I was just wondering stuff like that. But what happened with Howard last night? They said he had a concussion or something, or they took him out because of the protocol or something.
Will Howard did?
Yeah, someone was saying in the chat that he was out for a few plays last night.
I don't know. Let's see here.
No.
Will Howard. Yes. Sporting News says Ohio State surged in the second quarter Saturday night, blah, blah, blah. But starting quarterback Will Howard gave Buckeyes fans a serious scare late in the first half, exited after taking a huge hit in the midsection coming out of the game as Ohio State was in the red zone. But he came back in the game. So
okay. This is wondering stuff like that. All right. I know you're about ready to put the finishing touches on there, and you got a little bit of work to do and stuff. So the one thing I was going to say, so basically, to get this straight, the Thursday, Friday is back at your normal time, the 11:30 post game shows. So you won't be doing a morning stream no more, right? Starting tomorrow.
Not unless there's some kind of
week?
news. So yeah, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're here at 10 a.m. as it says there on the screen. 10 a.m. Eastern time on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we'll be here after the football games on Thursday and Friday. And as always, if there's some kind of coaching news, like Billy Napier may get fired, I don't know.
Hey, can you maybe add Graham Harrell to that?
If Graham Harrell gets fired, then we can add that, and you can celebrate that. I don't necessarily know if we're going to go live if Graham Harrell gets fired.
Well, sure. But no, one point you brought up a few minutes ago with Dave, and that was a great call, by the way. You were talking about Dave Wilson set the record for 621 yards in a game. Who did you say that was? Was that against Ohio State?
Yes.
All right, because I think didn't Sleeser throw for like 400 something?
Oh, yeah. He had a big game as well. Ohio State still won, but they
Yeah.
gave up 42 points. And I'm trying to think if that record's been broken. That was
it Graham Harrell or Cal Brandon from Hawaii?
I know
think
it's
the
been
record.
broken nationally. I don't know that it's been broken in the Big Ten, but yeah, it's been broken nationally. There have been 700-yard games by
Yeah.
some of the guys that you're talking about. Let's see who does have the all-time passing record in a single game. I don't remember college football single game passing yards record. I guess we're looking at. Oh, yeah, I remember this game. That was set by Pat Mahomes, 734
Yeah.
in 2016.
And as far as for the Big Ten, Dave Wilson still has the record.
Wilson still does?
621.
Okay.
Yeah, but Tua Tagovailoa has the all-time passing record for the most yardage in the conference, but the single game record is still Dave Wilson's.
Oh, Talia does. I got you.
Yeah, Talia.
Yeah.
That's it, too. Sorry.
Talia is the most passing yardage. Yeah, well, he played for 2021 and 22-23. Okay, 4 seasons. Although one was only a 5-game season.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, Pat Mahomes, I don't know what happened to him, but
I don't know. Maybe try to go for history this year. But hey, I mean, if you was a Supreme Court justice and Mike Norvell came to you begging for his life, for you to spare him, for he doesn't face execution, what would you do? Was the Florida
Mike
State
Norvell?
Yeah, was Florida State, the football team. Came begging to you to spare them and commute your sentence from death to life, as bad as they're playing this year.
Mike Norvell is the coach that we would choose to execute?
No, I'm saying in general, as a Florida State, the team itself as bad as they're playing. Because I see they lost to SMU last night.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So would you grant them? Would you commute your sentence, or would you just say get it over with, put them out their misery?
Oh, to suspend their season?
No, just or suspend their season, or just let them go through the rest and be tortured.
Yeah, that's an interesting scenario you put together there, Michael. Yeah, I think Florida State's going to have to, regardless of who's playing, field a football team for the rest of the year.
Because I pretty much DOA after the Boston College game in week 2 and stuff like that. All right, I'm gonna let you go.
Thanks, Michael.
Enjoy your Sunday. I hope it's a good one. Take care.
Yeah. We appreciate it.
Yep.
It's not quite understanding what we were getting to there with the Supreme Court nomination, but okay. All right. Do appreciate Kyle stopping by. Thank you so much for that. Well, Mark, FSU sucks. Do they need a staff overhaul? Staff meaning from Norvell all the way through? Fire the head coach? Or that Norvell needs to clean out his staff? Well, unless there are things going on that I'm not aware of, if I was in charge, I'm not firing Mike Norvell because they lost 4 out of 5 games after he won the previous, 23-4? No, we're way too quick to pull the trigger. I would be more concerned about, number one, high school football recruiting at Florida State. And secondly, yes, this team, for whatever reason, against Boston College, didn't look like they cared to be there. I don't make that judgment on teams very often at all. I'm not that guy that tries to read the hearts and minds of people. I don't do that. But did not look interested against Boston College. And then I didn't see much against Memphis. I didn't see much against, who did they play? Cal. But they should have lost that game. They should be 0-5 right now. They should have lost to Cal. The Cal kicker missed 2 field goals, which also caused them to have to score a touchdown late instead of kick a field goal to win the game. But I unless there are situations like Kirk Ferentz, nepotism with Brian Ferentz, egregiously unqualified for the job, doing a horrendous job. Places like Indiana and Rutgers are firing offensive coordinators that are incredibly more successful than the Iowa offensive coordinator, and they just kept him on the staff. Unless there's something going on like that, where somebody needs to step in and say, we think you can do the job as the head coach, but you've got a blind spot over here. Take care of that. I would not delve into forcing coaching changes unless you don't believe in Mike Norvell. I haven't come to that place yet. But his high school recruiting has to get better, has to get much better. And a season like this then derails that. Drew would fire Mike Norvell. Relies too much on the portal. Yeah, I got burned by the portal. They came up aces in the portal the previous 2 years. First round defensive end, another first round defensive end, first round defensive tackle, one of the best running backs in the country, 2 of the best wide receivers, especially one of them in the country, their tight end. At least one offensive lineman that I can think of through the portal. I'm sure more. But really, all teams are getting to that point. Not all, but a majority of teams are getting to that point. If we went through the starting lineup for every Power 5 team in America and counted their transfers, it's just increasing by the year. And of course, the quarterback count is insane. Who does not have a starting quarterback in the Big Ten? Let's start with the Big Ten. Who's not a transfer? Michigan. Maryland. Michigan, Maryland. Michigan, Maryland. USC. Michigan, Maryland, USC. Nebraska. They've got a freshman. And pretty much the rest of the conference has a Wisconsin. Well, their starting quarterback was a transfer. And we got Kyle coming back with this one. Does Norvell need to clean house or trim the fat? Yeah, it certainly looks that way. It looks that way, and that will be something, of course, that we will discuss with our Florida State guys on Wednesdays, because we've gotten to that point in the season where there's no excuse for losing by 4 touchdowns to SMU. That's an embarrassment. You're either not a good coaching staff or you're failing to motivate, and you cannot get the best out of your players if you're losing by 4 touchdowns to SMU. So this is repeatedly happening where this team is underachieving by more than anybody in the country. So it's a big drop off. So be concerned. I'm not saying that you should just look at it as, well, Mike Norvell's a good coach. He had 2 good seasons. He turned around the program once. He'll do it again. It's all fine. This is just a blip on the radar. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I do think that he deserves more time. I think he's earned it. And so I'm not going to fire a guy who just went 23-4 because he went 1-4. But I don't use the word culture very often, but they have culture issues. When you don't have a team that they made a bad decision at quarterback and they whiffed. They, for as good as they were in identifying transfer players the year before, they whiffed this round. They just whiffed. So we do appreciate you being here, the voice of college football. And I've got the top 25 that actually makes sense. That will be out sometime later today once I get that put together. Other than that, I think we'll work on maybe some power rankings in the various conferences. Don't know that we had enough non-conference games that were meaningful to update our conference rankings. We'll stand on what we did last week. Although, shoot, Boston College almost laid an egg for the ACC against Western Kentucky. I saw a stat that this is the first time since 1945. That year should mean something to somebody out there. 1945, one of the greatest years in our country's history, that both Army and Navy are 4-0. 1945. They haven't played anyone, but they're 4-0. All right. What do we have coming up this week? Let's give a quick look to the schedule and see what we've got on Thursday and Friday. Is there anything of substance, which also reminds me of some other things I need to get done today? On the schedule this week, Thursday, Texas State and Troy, Sam Houston and UTEP. On Friday, Jacksonville State, Kennesaw State, Houston, TCU, Michigan State, Oregon, Syracuse, UNLV. Is UNLV going to pick off another power conference foe? It's already been Houston and Kansas. Are they going to pick off Syracuse? Syracuse traveling across the country to UNLV. I don't know what that really gains them. But they scheduled that game. All right, folks, appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Please grab the Amazon link on the way out, and please like the video and subscribe, and we will see you with the top 25 that actually makes sense.